Call the General Government Committee meeting to order. For a motion to approve the agenda. Second. Discussion on the agenda. All the minutes from our. Polk meeting.
Second.
Discussion on the minutes. Favor? Anyone has any conflicts of interest? Matters on the agenda, let us. Any public comments?
I have no public comments, Mr. Chair.
Any supervisors not seated as committee members that have any? Like to share?
I want to touch bases with this committee on the topic of kinship. Gotten a fair number of emails from people. I've got some phone calls about it, and I'm very interested in seeing that funding restored. So if there's some way that this committee can help with facilitating that process, I'd rather not do it later when we have to do it in budget meetings. So I think it's a very important project. We funded them for contribution, I think, to our our community. So I would like to figure that out. And I can work with, Chris and Vince if you want, but I just thought I'd bring it to this committee for you guys to kind of ponder it and how you might
It's already been figured out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where are we at?
Well, I guess it'll get brought up later at budget, but it's been resolved.
Okay.
Yep. So there's no issue. And they're currently funded. Their funding hasn't been cut off.
Right. No, I saw that for 2022.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is done during the budget season. Yep.
All right. Yeah. Well, we were actually on announcements and committee information, so I would say you find us. Does anyone have any other announcements or committee information? Okay, let's have a discussion and an update. Planning and funding.
Okay,
Will lead us in that.
I can just give you a quick update on the two elements that this committee has been addressing. Broadband. We're learning a lot about broadband as we go, and I actually have hired a consultant, Cliff Albertson. You may have known him. He's probably the most well-known communications expert in the county, but he's in this part of the state. And for between $5,000 and $6,000, he is going to create. He's going to do basically a verbal survey with all internet service providers that would work in this area, and provide us a map of what he calls in-mile service. In other words, it will show what neighborhoods in the county are covered by fiber optic cable broadband. It will show what areas are not. And there, with that information, we can use that, leverage that information with the internet service providers to identify where our priorities should be and what types of service would be most suitable in those areas, and then possibly come up with specific incentives or programs. But this is a start, and for a small amount of money, we're going to get information that we've not been able to get to date from the internet service providers. Regarding parks and trails, the things that we've been, you'll see in the budget proposals going forward, a continued increase in investment there. Lately, we've gotten more signage for the Stour Trail. one of the things that Environmental Services is working on is deciding this year whether or not to complete the Summers Lake parking lot for the equestrian folks, correct? No. And so we are making progress there, but I think you'll see in the budget that we are investing quite a bit in parks and trails development, maintenance, and so on. What I've got. Yes.
On the broadband, what do the broadband service providers need from the county to go ahead with
Yeah.
their services?
And that's a good question. And if you ask them, I think naturally their reply will be, "Will give us money." But what they're looking for is a couple of things. They're looking for what will be profitable for them. And from us, we can do a variety of things. And I think there are some villages that are even talking about, hey, we'll provide Lakeland some cash if they'll move into this area. We'll help pay for some of their expenses. Another option might be if I go to Lakeland and say, you normally get 10 people out of 100 to sign up for your internet service when you lay down fiber optic cable. If we can provide incentives to the homeowners or to the citizens who live there to help pay for the cost of running the line from the road to their house, in that case, then they might get 20 of the 100 people to sign up, and then that makes it more profitable for them. So those are a couple of options. The other things, though, that spurs them is competition. And when we know exactly where the internet is and where the opportunities are, and maybe what the problems are, then we can look for alternatives. The alternative internet service providers, technology, and so on. And a little competition will spur, I think, faster development. So that's just some basic general things.
Coming back though, I guess my question, the providers don't need any permit or license from the county.
If you recall, yes, I mean, there are permits and so on that they do, but we pretty much 3 years ago eliminated the major hurdles in that regard. So the county has done good things already, hence we are broadband forward certified and telecommuter forward certified. So.
And I guess finally, at the last meeting, we talked about there are a lot of financing opportunities or alternatives that either are out there or maybe pending. We're not focusing just on using the recovery funds right now here.
Oh, no, we and the internet service providers and the villages and cities are all looking at that potential funding. It won't cover all of it. There are more things we can do to support it.
If we or should we as a body government have a express goal of entire county covered with so many bits per second or whatever it is service, or we had any discussion?
And that's the goal of the state to get coverage. It's the goal, a certain level of coverage. It's the goal of the county. From our standpoint, is let's get the whole county covered as soon as possible. And the reason I say it like that is everybody thinks that the broadband funding is going to pour in and enable fiber optic cable to be covered throughout the county. It's not going to cover every road, right? But the other thing is there's going to be a shortage of fiber optic cable. Fortunately, companies like Lakeland and Northwest Communications, so on, have bought ahead, so they have cable. The challenge will be if we don't move quickly on this, then they're going to run. When those companies run out and we try to order more for future, it's going to be years instead of months
let me understand again, the state has expressed the goal. How is that worded? What rapidity of service is it?
I think it's 100, is it megabytes, or what's it called? 100 megs up and 100 megs down. So that's fast. The goal, to have that available.
So are we operating basically under
It
state's
depends.
goal?
Oh, yeah, I think that's reasonable. And the reason they set that goal is because the future of demand of all the services that'll be coming via the internet, hear about gaming and movies, but also work and working from home. And the types of files that will be sent across we have to have increased capacity.
I think in our publicity, maybe we want to use that some or other public relations. Is our goal.
And you have something?
Yeah, I just was wondering, a quick update on parks and trails and kind of what's going on between the different committees and everything. The monies from the sale of the lime quarry that had been designated for that, I understand a certain amount we had to spend this year. Has there been any plans made or any recommendations made on how to spend the rest of that money
Yeah,
in parks and trails?
we have spent some of it on the rustic trail along the Stour. We have used those funds on,
We're expanding the parking lot at the trailhead of Cattail. That's being paved Saturday. On there, the going to P-TAG on next Monday then is the Summers Lake expansion of that parking lot for better parking there to utilize those trails. That's a utilization of those funds.
and because we didn't go the entire way on the Stour with the rustic trail yet because of the road, the speed bump, so to speak, we can carry those funds forward, obviously, in the next year.
Anybody else? Okay, let's have a presentation.
Morning. At the last meeting, there was a question about education and types of plastics. And then if you look at the current ordinance and look at as it's written now and just refine that one. Last week, I sent that out to the committee with the changes highlighted on there. Have it up here. The only other addition that probably would come through is in section 836, where it lists all the recycling things that you want to go through. You can go scroll down to would be right here is number 8, foam, polyester, ice cream packaging right now. That could be struck from there because there's no market for it. It's being landfilled currently right now, so to have it in the ordinance doesn't make a lot of sense because there's no market for it.
Could that possibly change in the future?
It could change in the future. That we could add it back in there, but right now there's just no market for it. I did add a couple sections in there trying to define a little better requirements as far as like special event requirements that they have to have recycling. Also listing the county collection events that we do, our clean sweep events. Defining what our containers are and how they should be labeled. So if they have recycling containers, they're pretty much standard how they're labeled. Removed a section that only allowed Polk County residents to drop off at the recycling center because we have a lot of out of state that drop off at the recycling center and those that come across the river for that. And then removed section 8321 volume-based collection fees. Section is not needed. It's antiquated. All the haulers are based off the size of their container, whether it be recycling or solid waste. The only other caveat on there that I mentioned in the email was that the fee penalties on there are from state statutes on there, and whether we just revert that to say we're going to go off the state statute for penalties, or we just have a different section so that we don't have to amend the ordinance every time if we want to change it on there. Any comments or any other changes that anyone saw in there? I solidify this and then bring it back to the committee next month to get out to you guys.
Quick question. I don't know if we can do this or not, and maybe we can comment on that. But for example, I've seen local ordinances where somebody has a dumpster. Those items, they have to use a company where it's going to end up, for example, at the Barron County incinerator. Can we do anything so that haulers or whatever recyclables are collected within Polk County have to come to the county recycling center?
Yes, you can have that in there. The backside of that would be that a company like Waste Management that takes in those recyclables, or Republic that takes them to their own facilities, or the collection of those products and monetary values may charge our residents more because they're not getting that revenue from those recycling. And at current status, we couldn't do that volume at our center.
Is there any update on discussions with Republic?
We are meeting with the public on 14th, 1 o'clock with the public to see what they're coming to the table.
This is for Republic to start to bring their items.
It is Republic's idea on how they can help improve our recycling program. Whether it be utilizing the recycling center or not quite sure what they are on there, but they have some ideas on how we can improve our recycling center and possibly save the county money.
Okay, and when is that meeting?
The 14th at 1 o'clock.
Currently, the haulers don't need anything from the county by way of a license or permit.
Correct.
And other counties do require that.
I'm not quite sure on that. Requires a permit or not. Our ordinance requires that all municipalities have to have recycling, whether it be an open hauling contract with a resident can call any provider they want. Some communities have a sole contract where they just contract with one provider for it. But with that, they have to provide recycling, whether it's that hauler or a county drop-off. But we don't have a recycling permit, but I'm aware of that.
And I know we're going to get this on the next item. Municipalities or townships are all over the place. That goes, and I come back that some places there's no hauling of cycle.
Those municipalities are all part of the RU. County's the main responsible unit for recycling. Those communities have that choice, whether they contract with the haulers on there or they utilize our drop boxes at town locations for residents. It's available for them. There's no one going door to door enforcement.
Yeah, there are haulers that are hauling without hauling recycle.
Right, but recycling is still available for the residents.
A question, and I'm not quite sure etiquette. But is there any objection? Well,
You know what, it's a working meeting. If we open it up to supervisors, then we open it up to all. And I think it might be better if you let us do the working, and I'll be happy to fill you in. Because to be honest, we don't know what to expect. The salesman, so to speak, came here and said, I understand you got some challenges here. We might be able to help. Let me go talk to the big man at his headquarters. They're coming back. So let us work through that. I think.
Are minutes kept of a meeting like that, or any recording?
No.
More of a sales presentation than someone.
have quite a few of them every month.
Also,
We'll pass out, Supervisor Pritchard asked on how people know what to recycle and stuff, and kind of a summary of kind of what we send out on our flyers, our website, our emails to schools, showing people on recycling at different times of the year.
are you next?
Well, that's what it says.
All right, we're gonna have a presentation from Malia Malone, our council.
So I saw that on the agenda yesterday. And I reviewed the committee video from the last meeting, and it looks like the only question that was asked of me was one, to work with Mo on ordinance language. But the other question was how the county recycling ordinance would impact those local municipalities as far as what their authority is. And so in the last 24 hours, I tried to do some research. And there's an AG opinion from 2014 that indicates that once a county has established that they're the responsible unit, there's no way for the county to undo that and delegate back to individual municipalities the authority to run their own program. So we're obligated to maintain the recycling program. And each of the municipalities are obligated, both under the statute and under the ordinance, to have recycling available. Nothing limits those municipalities from getting recycling services through various methods, like contracting with haulers that will do it. But they're not required to do that. Some municipalities in different counties run their own recycling. In other words, they pick up the recycling and process it. So if you take out the issue of whether it's brought to the recycling center or not, the county would still be obligated to make sure that there is a place for it to go, whether it's contracting with a private company, process it, or doing some of it internally at the recycling center. So that's where we are as far as what our obligations are. Are there questions more specific that I can try to answer?
Could our ordinance, for example, say that a municipality have to gain county approval for whatever plan they had with their haulers or for hauling?
Because we are the responsible unit, we could enter into a negotiation with those individual municipalities. But as long as they're offering recycling, they're complying with their obligations under the statute. So like mandating a higher level of service, in other words, saying to a municipality, you must contract with a hauler that does curbside at every door. That's not something that we could mandate within our ordinance. But nothing stops the county from entering into negotiations to contract with that municipality for some type of a promise that they're going to do that, some type of contractual agreement. And if we do that, then yes, we would have the authority under that agreement, but not through an ordinance.
If I understand correctly, there's no requirement that a hauler would enter into any agreement for the hauler to enter into an agreement with the
Else got anything? Okay, thanks, Malia. Okay. Consideration, discussion, possible recommendations to the county board. At this point, are we ready for that, or do we want to? Ordinance.
I asked that this be on the agenda. It's a little bit like the chicken and the egg. How can you do an ordinance? You don't even know what the recycling center is going to be. Also, it was mentioned if we don't have a policy or an updated ordinance on recycling, how can we make decisions about it being? So it's a little bit like the chicken and the egg. But the ordinance process is close to completion, but at our last meeting, I felt a little bit like we're kicking the can down the road some more. And I think that at some point, we just need to make a decision, and budget time is quickly approaching. We're in the middle of it now, and I do think it's an issue of enough public interest to have the entire county board address it, whether it be as committee of the whole or as an agenda item. I have a resolution prepared that I could work with Malia on. That would be to make the investment to keep the recycling center open. And I'm a little bit at the point of, I just think we just need to make a decision, address it here at budget time. We can still do the ordinance, and this ordinance still needs to be done. I mean, there's still items there that need to be updated, certainly. But if we know whether or not we're keeping the center open, that may also impact what we want to have in it.
That's something you have with you today.
No, I don't have it with me. I wanted to have Malia look at it first and kind of have more of I have a draft. I wanted something that was a little more, had been proofed in everything before I brought it forth, and it wasn't on the agenda that we were going to have a resolution either. So I didn't know how appropriate it would be if I pulled it out of my folder, so to speak, without it being in the resolution.
As appropriate as someone making a motion right now on the floor on something the county.
So I would like to make a motion to send to the county board without any recommendation from this committee to address the future of the Polk County Recycling Center at our next meeting with the possibility or with the resolution, keep the recycling center open and make the.
I think there are two separate issues. There's the future of the recycling center, and I think there could be a resolution as to that. But the appropriation of the funds, I think that would have to be a part of the budget process.
Yes.
But that's my only comment.
So should there be two separate motions? Or just a motion just to take it to the board without a recommendation? And then I don't know, do we think that it's something committee of the whole should discuss? Or not?
Somehow we need to get it in front of the entire county board to make a decision. Bring it either with a resolution, keep it open, or a resolution to close it. And let it get voted on.
Or the resolution gets voted down, prove it, well, then it's gonna stay the way it is. You don't necessarily have to have a resolution to close it either. It can stay as is. If a motion fails or if a resolution doesn't pass, if you got the votes to pass a resolution to do something, well then I think you wanna,
Straight in or out.
if you're ready to try that, I've done a lot of resolutions on the board since I've been here, and as long as you feel like you got some consensus and you're comfortable with like, hey, I think I got all that tidied up here and I think I can get this passed, and you do it. If you get it shot down, then it's over.
I don't see what the benefit would be to kicking.
So one thing I will tell you that just as the county board agenda, something we're going to get here today is going to be a little bit about the ARPA funds. One of the things I'll just share with, if it's okay, Chair, because it kind of addresses.
If it's not, we'll stop.
Yeah, okay. So the idea is that we're going to have a committee of the whole now to work on ARPA funds, so these meetings don't last forever. and we're gonna do them before each county board meeting. One of the concepts I've been talking to administration about is that we develop these priorities. So are we gonna have county-centric projects, or are we gonna do off-county projects? So this would be a county-centric project. It could fall into the infrastructure box. You know, because it's buildings, it's like this building, that building, it's parks, trails, whatever. Fairgrounds. We're gonna have all these, we're gonna develop these boxes. We're gonna ask we're gonna ask staff to load the boxes full of projects. So it could be, that could be your project that you want loaded into that box. And at least you could give it a try through that process and get a vote on spending some of those ARPA funds to designate them to that, whatever you think needs to be done there. So that is something that is in the works. But it doesn't have to go that way if you want to do a resolution and run it to a committee, because a resolution to the committee, even if it doesn't pass the committee, it goes to the county board. I don't think we should put it on the committee of the whole until there's a resolution through this committee. And then it goes to the county board. Then we can decide, at the administration can decide, and I can decide if it makes sense just to have the resolution on the agenda, and we can have this discussion, or if we have to have a committee of the whole to do it. So there's probably two ways you could go about trying this.
So we can talk about it under the committee of the whole.
Eventually, but it might take a month or two to get those projects in those boxes. Yeah, but you know, yeah, because we're not gonna, staff has got to put the projects, if that's where the board goes and that's where we go after committee of the whole. I don't know that was the idea, that all these projects that are out there, there's all kinds of them, that they're all going to be put into these different boxes, and then we could fund these boxes, so to speak. We're going to be able to pick and choose, because there's more projects than there is money. So the board's going to have to start voting on projects here. So that's just one way to do it. Now, it doesn't have to be with ARPA funds. That's my point.
Yeah, it doesn't have to.
You can do a resolution and try to fund it through the budget process.
Well, and the impression I got was the consensus was that first round of ARPA funds that were received were going to go into the fund balances last revenue.
Well, we're going to talk about all that.
Okay.
But that doesn't still mean it, you know, it still has, it doesn't go to general fund. It's still going to be tracked through ARPA money, and we're
Yeah.
still going to account for it that way.
Yeah.
So
I understand
whatever.
that.
You have your choice on how you want to present a resolution, but I think you should either do a resolution through the committee, get it to county board, or you should work on it through the ARPA process. And either one, if one doesn't work one way, you still can do it the other way.
I was going to say, is there anything?
Yeah, you can try both. You can, whatever you want. Yeah.
But
I'm not going to put it on the committee of the whole without a resolution.
Sure.
I'm not going to put it on the agenda without a resolution.
So the resolution has to go through this committee before it goes to the board?
Correct.
And I'll have a resolution.
Or you have to have 2/3 of a vote to suspend the rules of order. If you want a resolution to go right to county board, you got to get 2/3 that you can put on the agenda that night.
And it can go to county board, even if this committee, whether this
Correct.
committee passes it or not.
It'll go with a recommendation, no recommendation. Yeah,
Okay, then I'll bring the resolution next.
probably the best idea.
Hey. Got on the annual report.
So I was going to go over the departments within the division, just what has transpired in the last year, to bring you guys up to speed. General government division is Department of Administration, Department of HR, Department of IT, CJCC. And then indirectly, the county clerk and the treasurer's office is headed by elected officials. Department of Administration, we filled the 2 vacancies that were created in early 20. We had Cassie, who was administrative support, that moved to highway. And then, Maggie retired as finance director. I came in shortly after Maggie, and We've restructured Department of Administration with a new mindset. It took a little while to recruit for those positions because the accounting world is highly competitive right now, especially at government pay, but we did fill those. We replaced Cassie, which was administrative support, with an accounts payable coordinator, and we're moving to centralize accounts payable, get better policy compliance, vendor management, that kind of stuff. It's kind of an area that there was some improvement needed to be done. I took Maggie's position. Since my position is finance and HR director, what I created was a senior accountant. That person will help with the daily accounting functions. The other significant thing we're undertaking over the next year or two, it's a big move, we'll move the county to divisional accounting model, match the divisional setup of the county, because right now we still have a departmental accounting. That's a massive change. The other piece that's missing is, in a corporation, as many of you are probably aware, you have a monthly closing process so that you can correct any entries, so you have a good financial picture each month. Right now, I can pull a financial picture together, but it takes me a couple hours because I got to look through various accounting areas of our software, various income statements, and kind of pull stuff together. So a big project that I've been wanting to do that the senior accountant is going to be key in is developing a monthly closing cycle account. That not only gives us better spot in time pictures each month, allows for better reporting, but we have very clean audits except for 2 entries every year. We have excessive number of adjusting entries at the end of the year, and we have lack of segregation of duties. Lack of segregation of duties we will likely never overcome because government operates leanly, and to do that you really have to have a lot of staff, so don't have a person ordering something that's also approving an invoice and those kinds of things. However, reducing the audit entries with a monthly closing process, we should completely get rid of that finding that's been on our audit for several years. This year we did a really good job. We actually reduced our adjusting entries by over 30%. We went from like 85 to, it was over a 30% drop. So what Rhoda and I were able to accomplish without additional staff, I'm really proud of. With the additional staff, I think it will make a significant difference. And I think a monthly closing process, not only will the administrator be able to get spot in time reports, we can provide them to general government. And I think it, as finance director, gives me a much better picture without really burdensome process of delineating where we are when I need to. We added the receptionist position out front, which also assists the treasurer's office and register of deeds clerk, and does some for us up in finance, as well as greeting the public, directing the public, answering the phones, kind of centralizing that operation, which is something that many of you who've been here a while recall Dana Fry kind of had a vision of many years back. He and Andrew was how to get customer service. For the 2020 CAFR, our audit and the CAFR presentation, we got the GFOA award again, CAFR Excellence Award. And then this year we had the clean audit, and like I said, we reduced our adjusting entries by 30%. I've been working with our audit team. I think with the plan we've got, we are very close, if not will succeed in removing that material adjustment warning in the next audit. We revised the financial policies, and we developed this annual review process that comes to you guys as a board for those financial policies. We do that annually now. And then we developed a contract review process with Corporation Counsel. We haven't had a good defined process, and that's working really well. Sometimes Joe and I get a little behind on contracts because we'll get hit with 10 or 20. It's a much more set review of the contract. In human resources, we're nearing the completion of the Kronos HRIS implementation. That's our new timekeeping and payroll system. This was started way back early 2019, started reviewing, and 2019 started implementation. Nearly done with that. It's been slow, but there's been a lot of changes in HR, and the HR team has kept plugging away at it, so that's nearly done. We identified an erroneous payroll issue as part of that for part-time deputies, both former and current, where they had not been paid overtime for hours over 40 in a week. But we settled that settled all the past due payments. We corrected the process going forward. We're sheriff's office making sure it didn't happen again. We've got stopgap measures in place, and we managed to do the correction within budget. I was able to fit it in budget lines for the back pay. So it didn't send us over budget. It was an unexpected occurrence, but didn't send us over budget. We transitioned the dental insurance plan to self-funded. Our health plan has been self-funded for some time, and we know our health fund is very healthy. We were paying about $125,000 a year in administrative costs for a dental plan. Buying a dental plan, we moved that to self-funded, and we reduced our administrative costs by about $100,000. That seems to have worked pretty well. We developed and implemented the policies and actuarial standards for the health fund management that you all recall you approved late last year. And that's where we start to get that health fund, the reserves where there need to be, draw it down appropriately, and then maintain the actuarial tracking of our health fund. Then we improved the employee benefits such as the HSA contributions from the county, and we kept our premiums flat for employees in 2020. IT, we addressed over 80% of the security issues identified in the security audit conducted back in 2018 that we all know was a pretty significant event. We addressed all the high and medium risk areas. We're working to remedy the remaining issues, but we've done a really good job putting software systems and processes in place to shore up our IT. I will probably want to do another IT audit in 2022 if I have funds available, a security audit to see where we are spot in time compared to. We began implementation of Office 365 system, which will be completed in the third quarter of 2021. We've got about 85% of that rolled out. It's been well received. We're already seeing a lot of efficiencies among staff with it. And I think it's really helped COVID remote work. Do it as we did it at the same time. Significant improvements to the aged infrastructure, and we developed a maintenance plan to keep that infrastructure up to date. You know, IT is one of those areas we had not invested in. Last year was, you know, you all invested heavily in IT and started to move us where we need to be. That was something that was, you know, sacrificed in prior budget years because of constraints, and we've made a lot of progress with our infrastructure. Updating servers, updating software, things like that. Cost savings wise, we reduced the number of computers. We had a lot of people with laptops and desktops. We moved to a docking system. So they either have a desktop or a laptop, but not both. So there's some savings there. And then copier printer wise, we started to eliminate printers and move to shared printer spaces, which saves us on hardware and maintenance costs for printers, which is really good. We increased our response time to help desk support requests, even without additional staff. And then we successfully rolled out and supported a large number of remote work hardware during COVID-19. So the IT staff, which has remained the same for many years, honestly, in just a year has done a significant amount of IT. And there's been significant dollar investment from the county, but we have put it to work and we've looked for as much savings as we can. CJCC, so we onboarded a new coordinator after our previous coordinator left in early 2020. Coordinator we onboarded took a director's position with St. Croix County. So now we just wrapped up grading the applications. We're about to interview for the coordinator's replacement. Hopefully we can keep them. St. Croix County poached a good candidate. But during that time without a coordinator, we revised all the policies and the business plan and revamped the CJCC. Developed a good business plan. Took the approach of developing the plan and then going forward, instead of going forward, investing, and then figuring out what we were doing after we invested. And I think the committee and all the stakeholders are much happier with where we come out on that. We developed the monthly reporting for the board, the scorecard. We'll keep growing that, as you'll see. And then we grew the first time offender program, which was a new program. We managed to grow that even during COVID. And we also took on the IDIP, the drunk driving program, took that on from behavioral health and wrapped that up. That is my summation. Does anybody have any questions? All right, thank you.
Okay, we're gonna have an annual budget review.
Thank you. You have a presentation in front of you. It looks probably intimidating and it's long, and I'll just say this, the purpose here today, one, you will approve after this, later in the meeting, hopefully the fee schedule. You were given that last month to take a look at. Fees basically relatively the same in almost all areas. But then I've also, what I'm providing here are extra requests budget like we do every year. In other words, my goal this year was to start off, we're not going to grow our budgets in each division. We're going to keep it flat. In the past, we've usually grown 2 or 3%. But as you all know, we continue to put more money back into our general fund. So, there's some built-in savings in there. But I also want to say that with the division model and our division heads in each division, they have done an outstanding job of finding efficiencies, reducing expenses, and holding the line. And every one of the directors has done that. And so with that, we looked at this year at keeping their expenses flat and then have them submit their extra requests like they always do. And my approach was, given the money that we are saving on an annual basis, given that we think we'll do that again in 2021 as well, we looked at some areas that we thought needed catch up, so to speak. IT, one of them. Highways, the funding and the resources available to continue to grow our highways is getting smaller and smaller, and costs are going up. And things like software. Can't tell you how many departments come to me and say, we got an issue. We have, our software for environmental services and mapping or whatever may be so old that we can't continue to get it corrected or fixed. Can't get it updated. We can't get, help with it. So we're at that point where we have to upgrade in some things. So to start off, Chad, you can go to that next slide. The budging principles, I've kind of mentioned some of them. And Chad, and let me just say again, not only do all the directors do a great job with this, but Chad has done a terrific job of pulling this together. When we talk, we set forth our goals right up first, and that is to say, we don't want to grow the size of the government. We want to keep it flat because we do think there are more efficiencies in there. But we also realize that, there are uncertain economic times that we need to be cautious about. So that's another reason we keep it flat. We are in the development of a 5-year capital plan by each department so that we can take a look at capital expenditures and project. Fees should not exceed the cost of providing the service, and you'll see that. I think in each committee, many times when they talked about the individual fees, the question that would come up from a supervisor in Clam Falls would usually be, how much exactly does that cost? And so we took a look at many of those and said, what should the fee be? Has the cost gone up or has it gone down? So that they are fair. The other principle, levy dollars are the last dollar spent in the budget, meaning if we get grants and so on, in the past, I've heard someone might say, we're going to use this grant money and save or we're going to use our levy dollars and then use that grant money at the end of the year to get special things that we wanted. So the principle is spend all dollars first and then the levy dollars. And finally, spending should be tied to the board priorities that we have, as well as the priorities that I know staff has put together in terms of things like IT, things that we've kind of fallen behind in the last. So first on the fee schedule, I think we can be relatively quick on this because you've looked at these things and there are very little changes. Most fees remain unchanged with a few small exceptions in recycling, parks, land and water, and land information. And if you want to move through these quickly, Chad, and if you all have questions, you can ask. I think most of our directors are here. But the appliance recycling fee increased to $20 from $18. Mattress recycling increased 25 to 25 from 20. Parks and trails, you know, as we're dedicating more to this, we kind of took a closer look at the fee changes or fees. And actually, the camping fee, if everybody say, hey, why are we increasing 15 to 20 or 25 to 30? That was actually passed a few years ago, I believe, Mo, and we just never implemented it, apparently. So we're kind of catching up on some of those things.
Vince, are you looking for a motion to approve of fees?
We will.
Oh, not today yet.
Yeah, we will today, but that's on the agenda for later.
Oh, okay.
So I'm just touching on the fee schedules right now. If you have questions, we can discuss, but then when this is over, then you'll vote on those. And if I'm going too slow or.
Yeah, you're going too slow because I don't care to hear about it.
Okay, so the fee schedules,
I
anybody
don't
else?
care about a park fee going up $5.
Right, okay,
So
so you could see them in there.
I think you're good. I'd vote
All
to
right.
approve your fee changes.
Thank you.
Oh, I was looking, manure
Okay.
permit
Oh.
fee.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Yeah, we got into the manure
Sorry.
area, and that was the fee. Oh, yeah, okay, it's to 753. Oh, all right, I got it.
Someone's already looked at all the fees. I'm not going to sit here and double
Right.
guess fee charges.
Okay, thank you. Next, we get into the additional funding requests. Now, these are the things that, because I put the limit on what each department could spend, their job is to say, yeah, but we have certain needs or issues coming up that may not be recurring, or they may be recurring, but they wanted to move forward with. So I approved some of these, I denied some of these. And then I also had a group there where I felt like it might be something that the board wants to have some more say in. So you'll see some discretionary or deferred things for the board that you all, county board, will decide. I generalize it on the slides here, but on your desk that you can take home with you and study over the month are the individual costs of each item.
You're not asking us to vote on either one of these sheets today.
Not today. no.
Okay, they're just for us to look at.
Yeah, to look at, and if you have questions, you can either call me or you can come back next month and have those questions.
So for clarification, if we look at the administrator approved, those are already within their budget constraints that you set forth already.
No, these are in addition to what their budgets are. And
The administrator approved and recommended are additional also.
yeah,
Okay.
You've approved $1.3 million of additional funding.
Yes.
Got it.
And then this one over here that has $1.5 million, you haven't put them in here. You want us to kick
right.
that?
Those are the things that you all can go down to your menu here and say, I think this is important for.
But we could also go through yours and say, administrator, what are you thinking?
Yeah,
Right?
Sir.
yeah,
Okay.
this is just my recommendation.
Sure. Yeah. Your feelings won't get hurt if we take a couple of these out.
No.
Try to.
Yeah.
We might not be successful.
No, and I think that's happened last year too. I mean, there are some things but you may have some clarifying questions.
Gotcha.
Okay, so let's see, let's start with the parks and trails. And again, you think about one of the priorities of the board's parks and trails. It's an area we're putting a lot of emphasis on. You can see parks and trails on this sheet, these specific things that I've approved to date, and additional funding of a total of $79,000 to replace and repair park facilities, to purchase equipment needed to maintain things.
So for example, does this come out of general fund or is this going to come out of our, like Parks and Trails? Would this come out of that fund that we have, what Fran brought up earlier,
Yeah.
the line quarry fund?
So what we will first do, I got the new levy amounts yesterday. I finished the worksheet on Friday. We will take all that
It's in that.
fits in what levy we have left,
Yep.
and then we'll start allotting. But the first thing that will go in levy is recurring fees, because we have to look at those year to year.
Sure.
Then we'll start using levy for the non-recurring. But then we'll look at the asset protection fund, the parks and trail fund, and the general fund. So,
You guys buy a lot of trash cans a year, huh? $7,000 every year for trash cans? Recurring?
Well,
That's a lot of trash cans.
We're starting to replace the existing galvanized metal ones that are painted brown
Yeah.
with more established, the concrete ones that have the,
Sure.
better liners in them.
How many years is recurring is that gonna be? Forever?
No, I think it was actually about 3 years.
Then you'll have them all replaced.
And then we'll have them all replaced at our parks and stuff.
Gotcha. So what happens after 3 years? I'm just taking that as an example.
Yeah.
So after 3 years, you've got this reoccurring in the budget. Does it come out of the budget in 3 years?
yeah, because, again, because it's an added expense, it will come to me.
And you will be,
Right.
or whoever's
Right.
here.
And, yeah, like, well, next year, the
Well,
question
yeah,
will be.
we'll have an opportunity next year to look at that 7,000 again as a reoccurring.
Right.
Gotcha.
To understand that it was the same as what we did last year, and then one more year will be expected, and
Yeah. Yeah, you remember the forester last year wanted $3,000 to repair some
Right.
roads. Came to me again this year, $3,000. Yeah, that's a recurring fee, but I checked with him to
Okay.
make sure, what did you do with it? And
Yep.
that makes sense.
Gotcha.
And I will say too, there are some equipment needs in there, and because we are grooming, we're doing more mowing, we're doing those types of things now on trails, so we don't want to be behind the 8 ball as we do these things. So that's where we have money there. The highway one, I think, is something, I know Mo has talked to us, I'm sure, over the years, saying it's getting harder and harder to meet all the demands with the funds. And so we created an additional funding of $150,000 to increase their annual levy allotment to the highway department.
What's the annual levy amount now?
give me a second.
The annual levy itself,
From the hip about
1.3.
$1,300,000 is your budget, or from levy?
1.3, and what these dollars were designed for was part of this to go into our FSA funds, which covers our share of our federal projects, which is an 80-20 split. The rest of it would go into our construction projects to up that line item, so we do more paving. With the federal projects, sometimes there's a gap of probably 5-6 years before you get to that. But I set money aside for that, $100,000, $200,000 a year. An example of that, County Road M is going to cost, our share of our 20% is going to cost $1.3 million. So I need to continually save for these federal projects that we cost share with, so that when we do either a local bridge where we pay 10% of that one, that I have those funds available, and those costs are just continually going up.
What's your current fund balance, or your like contingency cash that you keep on reserve? That do you?
It's approximately $3 million.
Yeah, and I want to, so I just pulled up what I presently got the income statement setting up for 2022 for highway. General property tax last year was $3,400,000. Right now, this year it's $3,618,000.
And again, these are good questions, but I'm not going to answer all of them today. You won't ask all the questions today, but that's what you can do until next month.
You want us to ask questions today?
You can if you want. I mean, the main thing is I wanted you to get your hands on this, to take a look at it and understand what we're doing. Now you can absorb it over the month and then come back. So be happy to answer what we can now.
Sure, okay. If you want to just rifle through them, I don't have the ask, but easier with you.
I'm more interested in making sure you understand kind of the reasoning of why we're spending this money where we are. Facilities, additional 203,000, but that includes, again, this is kind of one of those items, that's a catch-up item. Addition audio and video in courtroom 3. We have learned now the importance of those items during COVID. We have our really 3 people who conduct court over there. Audio and the video is poor in one and couldn't be used. So that was a major problem amongst the judges. Let's see, overhead doors, normal replacement of items on the buildings. The replacement of several small buildings, roof replacement of small buildings at fairgrounds. What I did was I kept a placeholder, so to speak, for the fair. There's some questions as to what exactly we're going to do and how much next year. And so I took the same amount of funding as this year so that we can continue our commitment to do what needs to be done now going into next year. If changes in a month or two or three, then we'll make those changes. But I just put these types of things in here already. Okay. Also in facilities, you'll see things like update the museum restroom. Those restrooms, I guess, are very old and out of compliance and due for them to be fixed. Law enforcement.
Just got a question for you, Vince. Painting of offices in government center, $5,000. If we're gonna remodel this whole building, why are we painting stuff that we're gonna tear that wall out in a year?
Well, these would be, I don't know if that's in that or not, but I think it's the normal painting and replacement over the course of a year.
Well, this is just a standard CIP line item for painting for
Oh,
office.
it just says additional funding on the top of this, so that's why I'm wondering if this is normal spending, why does it say additional spending?
Well, we haven't been spending a lot on paint. So this was just additional facilities to say, when, I know when Rod was saying, hey, we have to paint something, we don't have it in our budget. So at this
So
point,
this is everywhere, all the, that's across the street, anywhere you guys
Yes.
need miscellaneous painting, it's not here necessarily.
they call Rod,
Oh.
he say, I got it in my budget, as opposed to, hey, Vince, I don't have it in my budget, can I do?
Oh, I see, okay.
Law enforcement, upgrading software and licensing, install fencing. I mean, this is kind of interesting. If you've noticed in the lot over there, we have cars parked out. I thought they were just to show kids what happens if you drive drunk, but instead, a lot of those cars are used in, are being investigated for crimes, and they are evidence. We don't have them protected, so we're going to put a fence up that will keep those things protected and cameras on them. And then purchase of body-worn cameras for our deputies to wear cameras on their body.
You don't already do that?
All our deputies don't have any cameras at all.
The next one is really a priority, I think, for the county, and I think you'll agree. We've talked about this a little bit in the past. One of our goals is to retire, hire or recruit, hire, and develop our own people. Many times when we have an opening, we tend to go out with a search firm and we bring somebody from another part of the country. That's fine. Sometimes it's good to bring in talent. What we're not very good at is developing our own. We have people that take a job and they stay there forever until they quit, retire, whatever. And so we put an emphasis on training, which, as you know, we've got some leadership training going on this year, which is just getting underway here later this month. And we improved, to retain people, we improved our health benefits, dental coverage, and other things. This year, we are offering to our employees continuing education, something a lot of companies do. If someone is going to improve themselves, so in other words, when somebody in environmental services says, I think I'd like to be a director of finance. Well, in today's world here, you can't do that because we have these silos everywhere. What we're trying to do is encourage people to move so that we can keep talent that we have. And so one way to do that is obviously enhance our benefits too. And so we're going to offer educational refunds to people who take courses related to county work. Prove themselves, we'll reimburse them up to a certain amount. So we don't know exactly what that's going to cost, so we're going to start with a $75,000 fund.
So my challenge to that, Vince, is major taxpayer and businessman. A lot of our tax dollars do that. We're going to fund taxpayer money, take employee base away from what I can hire. you're gonna pay those people to get better education. I'm paying for that and I can't hire them in the open market.
Well, I would say I want to keep quality people here. These are people already working
Here
here.
we. Should that be a taxpayer burden?
And I'm kind of, well, I think we get our money back on this. Because right now we're going out and hiring outside people, paying a search firm to do this type of thing. We're losing on talent. I mean,
So are we.
yeah, well, so we're going to do something about
Can't
it.
hire enough people. We got open positions. We can't even get applicants.
Right.
We have self-funded tuition reimbursements within our own company.
Okay.
But should that be a taxpayer burden or should that be something that county needs to just understand is a benefit option?
I look at it as a cost of doing business. If we want to develop people,
This isn't a business. This is a government entity.
well, but we have to operate like a business, and we have to have people who make good decisions and can do the analysis. So I feel I can see your concern, but I feel pretty strongly, I'm in this as a competitive arena. I don't want to lose people in the private sector. They pay more than.
Yeah, they don't.
Well, it depends on your business, I
Right.
guess. But if you look at what some of our people do and what they manage and control,
I just think you need to be more specific with that. I agree with you to a certain point. I think you need more specific where you're putting those dollars. To just throw out a tuition reimbursement program for quality people, I think that's a hard sell for my constituents.
Is there an approval process when people want to utilize
Right.
the tuition reimbursement?
yeah,
Just an
So
open
people
checkbook.
just don't, come in and say, oh, I signed up
Yeah.
for this, now reimburse me or whatever. There's a process of
Yeah.
approvals they go through.
right. And that's what we're working on now. But yes, they would have to go through an approval process. It would be reviewed. It has to be something that will benefit the county. Okay, so it will benefit the taxpayer.
I can understand the return to that, but if you've got an individual that's personally benefiting themselves under taxpayer dollars, and then goes to the private sector because he's got all this additional training that the county paid for, I don't see that the same.
Yeah, and that's not ideal, is it? If we lose, so the key is, we're doing this to keep people here. You all have it in your company. We have it now, or we hope to have it here. I think it's a good
I
investment.
just gotta have a bar tab to keep my guys. I don't, if I had 75 grand for that, I wouldn't have a problem at our company.
Well, we got 450 employees, so maybe there's.
Do you really want to keep all?
I
want to keep all 450 of them if they're doing their job.
If I could say this, so, take my case, for example, I went to college in my 30s. I decided I needed to get my college education and all that. I invested a large amount of money in my college and large amount of time, all out of pocket because the agency I was with didn't have that, but that's something I really pursued. But that's a really high dollar investment that grows every day. I mean, I have a daughter in college. I know a lot of people do. That grows every day and it gets really, really restrictive. It's become a very common trend in the private market to offer tuition reimbursement. And what happens is people who have, say, their bachelor's that want to proceed their master's, they might have an interest in government, but they can go to the private sector and get at least part of their master's degree paid for. And master's degrees are really expensive. So it takes them away from that. Right now, I saw a report this morning, there's 10.5 million jobs out in America right now. There's 8.4 million people on unemployment. So we now have 25% more jobs than we have people, available to work we can't fill. I understand, but we're just trying to keep up.
That's what you think.
I don't think there's many people out there in government who can afford or who can have the extra resources to invest in that education. And there are some very key elements inside this organization that require specialized education, that require expertise.
No argument.
Sounds like you guys are gonna
Thanks,
get
Paul.
that one. You guys have got it down.
I just have a comment. I don't know how many police officers, give them years of experience and they leave. So it kind of goes both ways, but that's a specialized profession where if they leave, they're going to go to another municipality. They're not going to go to the private.
Well, you gotta give us you're gonna give the board an update next year to say how you spent the 75 grand and how well did it work?
Yeah. Oh,
Can you do that?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. I think,
It's just not gonna get lost in the shuffle.
yeah, and if you back 2 years and you look at the work, and there was a level of frustration, right? There was, for a variety of reasons. This is important for people's psyche to know that we're actually looking after them as well. And it's not just a feel-good thing. Darlene has people, we get people applying for jobs. One of the questions that come up is, do you offer educational assistance? We lose people because we don't do
Well,
it.
some people are gonna say that's good.
Some people don't care about it.
People say, hey, government's too big.
We don't think everybody's, well,
I mean, we all,
yeah,
there is a level of, like, really? I don't know how many people you walk around and talk to. There's a lot of people that I hear from saying, huh, there's 5 guys standing there while the highway's being built and they all got a shovel, right?
Right.
So, and I know that's a perception that we have to deal with. You don't deal with it like we do. So when you guys say, oh, we're gonna train that guy to hold 2 shovels, well, that doesn't feel good. So I feel the same way as Dan does, is that it'd be nice for something like that, that there's like a follow-up to say, here's how it's working, here's the plan. And just to say, because to me, I always look at everything 10 years. So in 10 years, we're gonna spend $750,000 on,
we don't know that. This is just the start.
it says recurring.
Right. Because we have to start with, and we don't know what the amount will
I get it.
We can adjust it every year. And it's not like we're trying to grow the number of employees. We're going to hire more people now. We're just going to fill the positions that we
I
have
get it.
or to upgrade the positions.
You'd be able to hire less if you improve your performance. Yeah. Education.
That-
That's the offset, right?
Yes. I mean, we talked a little bit, the role of government is, we hope, is not to grow, right? That's not our purpose. But yet the demands continue to grow. So how do we do it more effectively? And I can go through every department and say, I see people here that are very talented and they're being wasted because they don't know that they can go anyplace else. And they get mad when, how come that division gets this and how come that division gets this and we don't? What I'd like to say is, if you want that job, go get it. But I don't have any training. Well, that's what they really want to do. Yes, they should invest their own money and time, but if I can help that person stay here, I think it's a great investment. But
Sure.
we can measure it every year. Perfect. Right. Okay.
You never know what's gonna be a hot topic, do you, Vince?
No, with you, I do. It was HR last year too.
I didn't bring it up. You brought it up.
I know.
I would have just let it go.
You said it's few, let us few. County clerk, I will say this, boy, have we changed in 2 years, right? In terms of audio, video, meetings and so on. And nobody's happy. And we have access now to software that will enable the clerk more easily take notes, quality notes. It will also go into a system where it will videotape. And if you, me, or a citizen says, I want to go to the board meeting, I want to hear in the board meeting what they said about recycling, they will be able to quickly access the portion of that video that deals with recycling. So it saves time and it's going to be more user-friendly. And so we're doing this to really help the clerks do their jobs better.
To help the public too.
And it actually saves a little bit in personnel costs because we won't need IT here at board meetings. So.
Treasurer, just a minor thing there with digital scanning to get, everything.
Every year we hear that same thing, since I've been here, every year there's like, oh, we just need another 10 grand this year for scanning.
Yeah, we got more.
So I had that conversation with her. This will actually finish the remaining years. This will be the last for the treasurer's project.
So it's not recurring.
No.
Okay, so you'll change that word recurring. Oh, it says one time now.
Yeah.
Okay,
This will be the last for the
okay,
treasurer.
so this is the last time.
District attorney, I thought this was a good example of kind of using our heads a little bit, rather than buying a full-time private investigator to help them, which certainly they need those types of things. We allocated some funds that in those criminal cases or cases where they need support, they'll have some budget money to hire and help them in the collection of evidence and that type of thing. IT, again, a lot of money here, different things. It's not all that they requested, I can promise you. But so often we need help with our technology. So we're getting another help desk analyst. The data analyst is really a county-wide position. This is an analyst who will take data and could benefit finance, our computer folks, HR, or law enforcement.
Public health.
To look at data. We're going to be presenting all this information. This analyst, I think, is something that could be countywide benefit and be able to get quicker and more direct answers. And then a lot of this is security, making sure that we are doing things that keep us safe. Land information, I think Bob can tell you, or he told me anyway, the importance of software and deployment of the new ArcGIS mapping software. The old software is out of date and running out of ways to help. This will help us. It will help citizens as they go and look at the mapping. Forestry, just some minor things that are things that we've already done each year. Community services, we've learned so much with COVID and funneling people in and out of the building, and we know that the entryway there where we take customers in the community services needed updated. So we're going to remodel. That's in the newer portion of the building, and it's not part of the remodel that's being proposed. And then outside agencies, let me touch on those. You all heard the outside agencies come and make presentations. I think this group pretty much unanimously said, yep, we approve of these presentations. I did make one change that I'll point out. Polk County Historical Society had asked for a $26,000 increase, basically doubling the amount they got the first year that they received funds. And while they made a terrific presentation, it's a great cause, I felt that my recommendation would be to reduce that a little bit and fund them at half the additional request.
You're at the bottom piece?
Polk County Historical Society, where it says 55,650. They had asked for an additional 13,000 on top of that, I believe.
Well, so this has got their labor or some of those costs we weren't going to identify it as labor, but this is labor, some other reoccurring costs.
Oh,
Right? What's all in it?
all right. So last year you guys gave them $25,000, 50%
Yep.
of that cost. Plus they've got like their utility costs and that kind of stuff over there.
What's in that?
Right. This year they asked for $51,000. So it was an increase of $26,000. So what Vince is recommending is 13,000 of that 26.
You're cutting that 55 is how much of a deduct from what they asked for?
13,000.
13,000.
They'll go from 26, is that right? 26 to 55.
Sure.
And as you know, put a great wall down there for their building. But they're getting new restrooms. We're spending some money on the roof. We're spending a lot of money down there. But that's, again, you guys can challenge that, but I feel that's more than generous. And the intent, remember when we said, yep, we're going to fund you, you're going to get a full-time executive director, was, all right, now go to work and you start delivering in more fundraising, more contributions, and being more self-sufficient. For us to say, okay, because you asked for double the funds, and us saying, okay, kind of defeats that purpose of we're going
Did the board tell you that that's what we wanted you to do?
It wasn't a direct order, so to speak, but it was like, we approve of this.
Okay.
And I
Sure.
I just respectfully disagree, but you guys decide on it. Okay?
This is kinship an outside agency?
That's a good question. They are a nonprofit agency. This, I'm not a lawyer here, but they are a nonprofit agency that has not been designated as a type of organization that can receive a contribution from the county government. That I do believe.
So what, when the question came up, is it on our budget anywhere?
It actually flows through Tanya's area, correct? And so what we will be discussing at the board meeting is what has been done in the past. Is there a way, if we choose to support kinship, what is the appropriate way to do so? So you'll have that opportunity.
We're doing it wasn't.
According to lawyers and corporation counsel, then no, it wasn't. Now, we have had, though, our last corporation counsel come up with a potential solution. And so that may be something that we can revisit. We could also look at this as something to fund in ARPA for at least a couple of years until we find out, what's the best way to do it. But we've got some
And I'll give you a little response too, Russ. Supervisor Olson contacted Counties Association attorney. They feel very comfortable that there are ways to still fund this. So I've given my personal guarantee to these kinship people that we will be funding them this year. And we just got to work through it. But like I told all the people, we got a lot of calls on this, and it wasn't a county board decision. They're funded this year, and it's not a county board's decision not to fund them next year. So I'm going to, as the chair, require staff to put it in our budget. And how legally they got to figure out how to fund it, that's their issue to deal with. Because we had a corporation counsel a couple years ago that said this was legal. So there is a standing opinion that says we can do it this way. And this county's association attorney said there are ways to do it. So that's off to Supervisor Olson for contacting them and doing it. And I'm going to just say I haven't gone out on the limb like this since I've been on the county board as the chair, but it will be funded.
Okay. The next section is really for you all to consider as well about things that I did not necessarily approve, but I can't say that I'm against them or for them so much. But I do think, I initially said no, but I think they're worthy of your consideration. You can take a look at those, and you see, starting with Parks and Trails again, playground equipment at DD Kennedy. Again, thought is, do we want to do everything all at once? Question is, if you think this is important, we can. Paving the gravel parking lot at DD Kennedy. Right now we got a gravel parking lot. Question is, do we want to pave it? So those are the types of things where if you have thoughts or if you want to prioritize or consider, we'll be able to say that.
It's on, for example, paving the gravel parking lot. Whose request is that?
That came out of Mo's area, correct? And was that a result of, DD Kennedy being a kind of a showpiece, a nice place for the county?
Updating our parks, the other parking lot is paved, the entryway into the park is paved, but where you park is gravel.
And again, Mike, one of the things that I'd like to do on these kind of items, and I'll just say it before we go through them all, these are the things that I think would be good items to put in those ARPA fund boxes, right? So
Some of them, certainly.
some of them
Yeah.
could fall into those ARPA funds.
I just have a comment on, and maybe applying to both. We have our Parks and Trails advisory committee or task force. I don't know if this is within the domain of what that task force does, but the other thing, I look at the ecological aspects of having tar or gravel in, next to a river, in Kennedy Park. And I would opt for the gravel on that basis unless there's some persuasive reason why blacktop would be so much preferable. But if I'm driving in, the user of that park, I would prefer to have gravel.
And those are excellent comments, and that's, next meeting and next month when you talk with the board, those are the kinds of decisions, comments you can make. And so I think that's very legitimate. Information technology, disaster recovery and a backup system. That sounds one thing, right? We do. But the question is can we do everything every year? And no, you can't. And we put a lot of time and effort and money into making our systems more secure. While yes, this backup system will be good, I delayed it. My thought was to delay it another year. And but that, if you all say you feel like it, so then you get the gist of where I'm going here. You guys can make the decision. Just think about them. Facilities, things like lighting, LED lighting to reduce maintenance and energy costs. Those are nice. Reduce energy costs. Do we want to pay the $45,000 now or not? Purchasing of gaylords, and I put really any type of investment in the recycling center I put here in this area because I think we're going to be making decisions. So the gaylords, removing the recycle bins within the center, about $10,000. Replacing a 1-ton plow truck for the government center. Now, that is a plow truck that we will use at all of our facilities. The one that is aging and needing a repair on occasion, we would send that down to the recycling center for their use at that facility. And then things like the recycling center, if you've been out there, you've seen the overhead door is functioning great, and the above it has been damaged by a truck, and so we can repair those. And the question is, if we're going to redo some things at the recycling center, want to go and do this now or wait until we decide what in fact is going to happen. You can go to the next slide. Is big haul truck for the recycling center, $95,000 to get those that haul the bins. 3 entrance doors for the museum. Looks good down there. I can see where they might want to go to an older version of doors, probably improve efficiency and heat. But that may be something that, we've done a lot with them this year. We may want to put that on. Land and water. This is good, to show our commitment to water quality and preserving our natural resources. Bob has recommended a recurring cost, $10,000, kind of a fund that we have at our disposal when we want to do or need to do a water quality study or a project that might involve, working with a watershed district or the farmers group down in Horse Creek. And that would again be one of those things where I don't want it to become a slush fund by any means, but we would review it and say, one, it shows our commitment, but we'll make sure it's being used for the right things, or if it doesn't get used, it stays there. So we need it. And then if it gets to a certain point, we just stop funding it.
I got a question, Vince. Like on things like that, or even on the parks and trails, did these run through environmental services, these other items that the committees have kicked the can and said, yeah, let's wait on? Or is this just the staff thing, or have you brought it up to them?
Not yet. We present it to you first, and then we present it to environmental services before.
We don't approve it until environmental services says, hey, this is our budget.
Well, environmental services will comment on this. Yeah.
So, you guys see the additional funding requests, Now they'll go to each committee over the next few weeks.
Sure.
And then in October, when you get the draft, well, the
Right.
administrator's proposed budget, include a fund request, then you'll also have all the comments from the committees
Right.
to make any changes.
Right.
The hope would be just to smooth out the budget process, that anything you guys want added or deleted, we do in October, not at the last minute.
Law enforcement, this is a big one. 1.1 million for microwave radio system and backup batteries on the radio system towers. Now, we have to have backup. Now, we have one now, but it's outdated. Hard to get service, if at all. And so we are at risk a little bit there. You have to have it by a requirement, a state or federal requirement. Yeah. I put it here because we have some options. This may in fact be an ARPA type project. It could also, if you chose, we could fund it out of our asset protection fund, which we have the money in that fund, about 1.6 million. That's a fund that's been sitting there and growing a little bit each year. We're going to start using that on certain assets. And this may be one of those.
I have a recollection, we put a large amount of money. For
So,
this relates to
you want me to walk them through the timeline on the radio system?
Yeah.
So about 15 years ago, the county invested in a new radio system. That system got more expensive than the county could bear at that time, and several things were cut out. One of the big things that was cut out was preventative maintenance and upkeep. We bought a microwave system to go with that radio system, but we did not buy the support for that system. So over the years, we've kind of pieced it together. 2 years ago, the board invested heavily in an update to the consoles and the service agreements on the consoles and dispatch. And I put those systems on a 10-year maintenance plan. It was $1.2 million, but spread over 10 years, that updates and keeps those things up to date for 10 years. Last year, the board invested heavily in the handheld radios and the car radios for the sheriff's office, which were also 15 years old and end of life. We budgeted $440,000 and ended up getting them for about $380,000. But what has happened with our radio system is 15 years ago when this radio system was purchased, and the radio system supports the sheriff's office, all the village PDs, all the ambulance services, and all the fire services. We didn't have the money at that time, and we took the approach of we'll fix it when it breaks. Well, unfortunately, in the past 3 years, we've had major occurrences. So what the chief deputy is trying to continue, what we started a couple of years ago, is getting a system that we can maintain so that we don't have these surge expenses over the years.
So a system like that, what's the expected, when would we revisit that to have another big whack at that? How long is that going to last?
Realistically, you can hold out for 15 years.
15 years?
Yeah, 10 years is your replacement cycle that you should really shoot for. 15 years is what you can realistically stretch stuff to.
So you've gotten a brief overview of that, and you'll get more information. Levy and
We did miss the IT slide for them if you want to go. Backup system. You did it? Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that.
All right, we'll maybe do we're gonna try to get to our closed session.
On 15, if that's what you need, you would recommend fiscal year fee schedule. I'll make a motion to approve that.
Discussion? Not all those in favor?
Aye.
We have a resolution.
We have to have a resolution as part of the process that adopts this.
Motion to approve that.
You're on 16 now?
Yep.
Adopt the master fee schedule.
Yeah.
Second,
Second.
all in favor? Carries. All right, we're gonna skip I think 17, I think that's gonna take a while. Dan's got a prior commitment on him on the whole session. So no one has an objection.
It said the resolution 4621 to be distributed on the floor.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. We're gonna skip and go to 18 to the closed session. We'll do 4621.
What's the big deal about getting to this closed session?
Well, Dan has to leave at noon. That's something. Just spent a lot of time.
Sure. A lot of time on that.
And we're holding
Oh,
people here.
sure, for that issue.
waiting
Oh, I got
for
you.
that issue. We maybe should have moved it right out.
Oh,
Let's do the
I'll
closed
make a
session.
motion to go into closed session.
All in favor?
Aye.
Well, are we ready, Chad? I mean,
Out of closed session?
we'll have an opportunity.
We're out of closed session.
At least one door.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're in open session.
Also got, we got stuff to do. We skipped.
All right, did we need to do anything on the capital improvement planning?
So it's part of your additional funding request, so the capital plan will be finalized based on the additional funding request.
That's everything that you were going
Right.
through on the.
Those are all capital expenditures.
Resolution 4621.
Really short and sweet.
And we can change the be it resolved clause to really say anything. So this is just like the initial idea as a placeholder so that you could.
So is anyone going to talk about this or is that up to me?
Discussion and possible action.
I would say, yeah, I think it's a good idea, yeah.
All right, so we're gonna, doing this under committee of the whole, right? We have to have that one meeting for the redistricting. So I took the other 45 minutes and I'm planning on every county board meeting to have a committee of the whole prior to the board meeting on ARPA. If we get clogged down, or if it looks like it's gonna take 2-3 hours in an agenda and people are waiting, listening to us debate all this. So the idea is that committee of the whole would be the hour before county board meetings on ARPA. So this was because of all the conflicts and all the different people asking for requests. A few supervisors had made this comment, and I feel strongly about it too, is that we first vote on whether we're going to, and the comment or the word Chad used was centric, right? County-centric projects. So this resolution basically says that the board is going to vote to either say they're county projects or they're going to be divvied up with townships, villages, what a lot of these requests are that Vince is getting. And, my feeling is we will never get this done if we're all voting on each other's projects in our own little districts or towns or villages. We're gonna be in a quagmire for years, not approving each other's projects. It's county money for county, and if we do it the best interest of the county, there should be a lot of opportunities for this to be a benefit to all the municipalities if we do it right. So this is basically just asking the supervisors to vote whether we want to be using the ARPA funds for county projects. That's what this resolution is about. And I've talked to administration that I feel like that idea of these, so at our mean, the whole idea is that we're going to discuss county-centric projects. What are they? But to identify them as some of the simplest ones where we were saying one could be a recreational box, one could be a infrastructure box, one could be a service box, and one could be another box. And then staff would develop projects, or us, any of us, could ask staff to put this in that box. And they're broad enough boxes that we could put a lot of projects up there. And then over the next few months, the board could now start voting on these projects, because more than likely there'll be $15 million worth of investment of these projects, and we only have $8 million. So the idea is that we would put things in these county-centric projects, and then we would actually have votes to where we could actually say, yes, spend money on the fairgrounds, that much. Yes, spend money on recycling. Yes, spend this much money on trails or park. Or this building. There's supervisors that have requested some of the ARP funds to be used on this building construction project. Or the sheriff's tower, radio deal. I can't remember, there's boat landings, there's all kinds of ideas out there that could fit in these boxes. And then we'd vote on them over the course of time as projects need more, maybe some of them aren't ready to actually approve yet, right? Maybe they need more. Supervisor going to say, hey, I need more than just a guess. And then over time, staff is going to develop the projects that we say are priorities for these ARPA funds. So the idea is this is the first step in just getting over the battle of whether we're going to spend money on community projects or in villages or in townships, or are we going to spend them on county projects. So this is like the first step to kind of get us over this hump to start kind of identifying, right, Vince? I mean, that's the lead in. You guys can add more to what my concerns have been as the chair and what I'm hearing from a lot of people.
I have one question.
Yeah.
So does this resolution cover all of it? Is the intent of this for all of the ARPA monies or only the first bucket of money?
Question. You want to just take the first bucket, then we just use the first bucket. But that's what will happen at the county board on this, resolution. Or do we say, this is our goals right now for projects, but in April, we could have a new board and they could change it anyways. So do we say, these are long-term goals? Because we have to spend them, we have to identify the projects by when? 24, and we have to fund them by the 26th. We've only got 4 or 5 years to get this all gone, and you see how long things, like you say, you feel like that we kick the can a lot, or you know what, we're going to be just doing this at the end, or someone else is going to be just, hey, we got to get rid of this, we got to get rid of this money, and before you know it, I personally think we should look at using the whole money and have a long-range plan, and then let future boards come in and fine-tune it. But the original intent was, here's our priorities, here's what this board said. Doesn't matter, we can change them at any time. Another resolution could say, hey, we put these projects in this box. 2 years from now, a board can say, we're not doing that, let's move that $100,000 to this box.
The only thing I'm thinking is that none of us can predict the future. Don't know what's going to happen. Something may happen within Polk County. There may be a weather event. No, I mean, nobody expected COVID to happen.
Right.
And things may come up that, would take us away from what we're right now going to put.
And you can change that later, because when are we going to get the other chunk of money?
Next May would be the earliest.
Yeah, so next May, you're going to have more money and, you can revisit it. Yeah, and that's something that, it'll take a vote of the board to decide whether, it's all going to take voting of the board. This is just to get that discussion there.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem.
Yeah, that's why. And yeah, definitely.
Conceptually, Chad say that it's 4 million was your number, 4.25 was replacing lost funds because of the pandemic.
Yeah, so we declared it when I filed the report, that's what we declared it as, but I still have to report how the money was spent. Now, what happens is you guys are allowed to spend the money on almost anything you normally could spend a tax dollar on. It's just, I just have to report it out that it was actually spent and what it was spent.
If we're replacing funds that we were saying we would have had but for the pandemic.
Right.
Or does that say our receipts per budget are $4 million under what they would have been?
By their calculations. Their calculations were really generous, but yes, that's the idea.
What I'm thinking, should that simply be going back into our general fund or whatever we want to call
Already
it?
put it there.
It does, it's just,
We already put it there.
it's just you guys have to tell us, okay, the money we're spending, this is how much is the ARPA money, because I have
I
to.
guess the other way of putting the question, are there things that were in the budget that would not be funded but for the ARPA fund,
For the existing budget,
the existing budget? Yeah.
now the existing budget, we're doing fine on. There's only a couple caveats on the use of the lost revenue. And the first is you can't use it to offset a tax levy.
But I still am having a problem. We're saying we had a shortfall.
Well,
We
we're,
did it.
we're using their assumptions, and when I say their assumptions are very generous, they're very generous. They're not, they're called counterfactual assumptions. They're not what our actual lost revenues were. It's,
Did we have an increase in our general fund?
yeah.
Yeah.
We
We didn't lose any.
We
So-
received a lot of money from
Yeah.
feds and state.
Right.
That wasn't counted.
Right.
Take that out.
So it's basically,
Right.
in a one word, a windfall for us.
It is.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to spend that first 4 million like we were going to have to the second. If we can just put it in the general.
We
fund.
still have to have it spent by the
26, and I just have to, yeah.
It's that first 4 million?
Yeah, it's a weird thing. You can spend it on pretty much anything, but I still have to file quarterly reports and show how we're spending it. And any of that tranche of money that's unspent has to be returned.
I thought that was supposed to cover losses. So it could just go in the budget and that form was already.
They can, but they still got to track it as ARPA funds.
It can go in the budget, but it cannot lead to a reduction in the levy based on that money.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That's the
So
caveat.
will this resolution stop the light and water tower request from coming in and
Oh, yes,
stopping
it will.
every
Yes,
place out there?
yes.
Like pretty quick, farms are gonna start asking.
Oh, I've
for
already had it.
money.
Yeah. It's
or businesses.
it stops. I mean, you could get pretty creative, and if we, and there's where I think committee of the whole, we're going to discuss that in more detail. But it is going to be county-centric project. So let's say, I'll finish and you can talk. If Pritchard thinks the red schoolhouse at the fairgrounds needs some money in it, well, that would be a county project. We own the property. So you could fund a old schoolhouse. I think you asked for some money last year on it or something, or something you asked for. But if you wanted to spend $1,000 on the schoolhouse, you could put that in that box. We could vote on using it for that. If we have a county park, someone could put money in for the playground, or I seen things on here for, I was looking at these additional requests, board consideration, almost everything on here, there's $1,500,000. I bet you could be creative and every one of those dollars could be used out of ARPA funds, especially the ones that have been slipped to the general fund. We could fund every one of these projects out of the ARPA fund. Playground, radio tower, LED lighting, offsite storage, Lotus Lake, E.D. Kennedy.
And also any amount of the administrators recommended that exceeds the levy.
Yes, could be used for that too.
So long as we use all of the levy, that's the only step.
Mike, you're gonna get to talk. You don't have to raise your hand up while I'm talking, please. Done.
But
We skipped over the capital improvement planning item on the agenda. And a question for Chad. All right,
Excuse me, I got a point of order.
excuse me, I
got a point of order to the chair. We're not talking about another agenda item right now. We're on this resolution. So if it's not pertaining to this item on the agenda.
I object that
Well, I'm not
it
talking to
does
you.
pertain to
I'm not
that.
talking to
I
you,
have a
Mike.
specific question.
Mike, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the chair right now. So I just don't want to
Let's,
talk about another agenda item if we're on one right now.
we did skip the capital improvements. I asked if Chad felt that he had given us enough in their presentation that we
Go back to it if you guys want to, but this is what we're on
Can I
right now.
resume speaking, please?
Yeah, I just want to make sure we're talking about this resolution.
I think you're trying to pick a fight here, Chris.
No, I'm not.
Frankly.
You got to stay on the agenda.
I am on the agenda. My question for Chad would be, how many of the items on the capital improvement plan could be funded with the ARPA funds?
Anything on this list could be funded with the ARPA funds, these two lists, so long as we use all of the levy dollars that we're eligible for this year. So the only real caveat when you recover the money as lost revenue is you cannot use it as a tax offset to the taxpayer.
I understand that.
So anything that exceeds the levy balance on these lists could be used for ARPA.
But there are matters for the capital improvement planning that are not on that list. They could not be funded with the ARPA fund?
No, sir. There's no matters for capital improvement that aren't on this list, with the exception of the building, the facility update. That would be it.
Okay.
Everything that would be capital is on these lists.
Anyway, I am supportive of the concept of the resolution that draft of here, but I would like to have more specific discussion on capital items that might be funded.
And Chair, that's where I think that's what I was trying to say earlier, is that's what we're going to have committee of the holes for, Mike. So you, all supervisors will be able to discuss those items and request the staff any items that you feel like are not on this list today, because I didn't see on this capital improvement, and I know it's a hot topic for someone, is to do the fairgrounds, right? So, for example, there's the CIP out there for the fairgrounds. Rand's talked about $1 million investment into the recycling center. Those all can be discussed at committee of the whole over the next couple months, and you guys can add those. That's what I wanted, to give everyone the opportunity to add as many things as you want to the bucket list if we're going to decide they're county-centric projects. So you guys as supervisors, anyone could ask staff then to put these items in those boxes that we'll be able to vote on and discuss in more detail. And we'll do those at a committee of the whole, so the whole board, it's just not going to be done at general government. It'll be done at committee of the whole. So every supervisor will have an opportunity to go over that.
One of the problems there, I guess, somewhere I'd like to see a sheet of paper that has, let's say, the recycling center is an excellent example of what could or should we be spending on the recycling center in this discussion, and saying that all is going to come up committee of the whole. I don't know how all that gets in front of 15 supervisors
Every month.
before that discussion.
Every month, we can talk
Yeah.
about it at committee of the whole, administrator, and that.
Yeah, I think, I understand the suggestion is if we can commit to certain parameters, then we can take all the ideas that have been submitted to us and try to formulate them into a project plan. And one of them is, for example, recycling center. We would probably take, okay, here's one plan, here's how much we think is going to cost based on the FOF study to do that. And so we might say, count on 1.5 million. And that, it's a ballpark, but we would then specify, here are the types of improvements we do. Here's the intent, if we choose to do that.
Part of the budget, we do have a capital improvement section. When are we going to see it draft?
You see the proposed one in October. And what happens is, so the divisions and departments design their 5-year plan. Then we go through the additional funding requests, which are part of that first year in that plan. The additional funding requests that aren't approved by the administrator are pushed to later years. The ones that are in there, and anything you guys changes in that 5-year plan, and I produce the final 5-year plan for 2022.
Would that be available by October 13th?
Yeah, it'll be part of the proposed budget in October. So, and then anything you guys were to add between October and November gets added into that budget or that plan adjusted based on.
I don't know if the motion would be to recommend this resolution for approval by the board.
That's the motion. Discussion.
So do we need to add anything more to this, Malia, or are we just gonna leave this the way it's drafted? And does there need to be a signature? Or do we put a total of what? I know you left blank, the plan on, like Fran said, I mean, are we gonna leave it blank? Because Fran says, oh, we're only gonna talk about the current money? And do we wait to fill that out, or do we talk about all the ARPA money?
I think that we wait and see if some board meeting specify one or the other.
I'm just saying there's no dollar in there at all now.
The only reason I left it blank is because
I don't know the number.
I didn't know the exact
You know the number, exact number, Chad?
Yeah, I'll pull it up.
I don't need to know it
412.
today.
It's in the prior resolution. I'll pull it up.
Okay.
Um,
Then maybe that number should be in there.
Or we could just say,
This is just a recommendation.
receiving ARPA
It's
funds.
just a recommendation. And again, all this is saying is we're going to spend it on county projects.
And then once you get there, I think the discussion about those buckets
Categories.
makes perfect sense.
You don't even need to list them all. Why would you just say, Polk County will receive funds?
The American,
The rescue plan, and don't
don't put a number in there.
amount.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Well, and that's probably a good idea because that second tranche is not guaranteed and subject to change based on the federal.
Sure. So let's not put a number. Okay. So maybe let's just take that.
Are you okay with that, Mike?
I'm fine with that.
Put a
I'll
number.
make sure that that's the one that I emailed to the clerk.
Good with that.
Right. Got a motion, all those in favor? And we gotta, do we need to do anything to update our work plan?
No, sir.
Work plan?
Let's give them some more stuff to do.
Any subject matters for the next meeting? Somebody's gonna make contact with deputies and sergeants, make sure that they're good to meet that day. If they are,
I'll reach out today. If they're not, then I'll email you
we'll
and say what you want to do.
yeah. Either Dan's gonna miss the. Or we just don't negotiate. We can still meet the. So Dan can be present for the budget presentation.
I'll send an email this afternoon though and reach
I think
out.
that's important that at least we have part of that meeting that day.
Well, we
If
get,
we don't do the
even
negotiation.
if we don't negotiate, we still get the budget portion
Right.
and Dan would be available. Otherwise, we probably got enough on our.
We'll have the final draft then.
Sounded like that's what,
That's what we discussed. I just want,
well, you got to be the one to do it.
As long as you bring it,
As long as you bring it, if you get it done,
wasn't on the agenda. I will,
have that on the
we
agenda.
will put that on the agenda. You have to do it.
I thought I couldn't put it on the agenda without Russ
We Put something on
or
here
somebody.
today.
Yeah.
But you get the one on here today.
I did, that's what I'm doing right now. At the last meeting, I asked, so that's why I'm asking
Put the
now.
recycling.
There you
give Russell the-
Yeah.
Just trying to follow
Yeah.
the procedure.
Otherwise, you can just
Yes.
get a hold of the administrator, ask for something to be on the agenda, and it's not a,
Yeah, unless the attorney turns you down and says, I'm not drafting a resolution, and Vince says, I'm not drafting a resolution, and then ultimately it comes to me, I could say, yeah, you draft a resolution, put on the agenda, but 99% of the stuff, if you got a resolution and you go get one drafted by the corporation council, you don't have to ask permission. You just tell them to put it on next month's agenda. Yeah,
Yeah, I have a proposed one, and so
Yeah.
I'll work with Malia.
yeah.
all right, I think we got one thing left to do.
I'll make that motion.
Favor?
And I wasn't picking a fight with you, Richard. You started talking about the agenda item, and if you wouldn't have said it.
I had a question related to capital funding.
I know, but
in
you
the
said
ARPA